Okay, our next speaker is Dr. James McClung, who will be joining us virtually. And he is the chief of the Military Nutrition Division at the United States Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine in Natick, Massachusetts. And he's going to be talking to us today about research on the performance triad.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking the organizers of today's meeting for the invitation to give this presentation, and also to apologize to all of you for my inability to attend. After 3 hours on the tarmac last night and a valiant effort, the airlines had different plans for me, unfortunately. So I'm James McClung. I'm the chief of the Military Nutrition Division at the Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine, and I also chair the DoD's Food and Nutrition Subcommittee. I've got no disclosures or conflicts of interest to share. I am a federal employee, and my research, or the research of my team, is funded generally by the Department of Defense. The objectives of my presentation today are to share the work of my organization. I'll try to avoid the use of acronyms. The Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine. I'll focus a bit on our mission, capabilities, and the Military Nutrition Division in particular, and that is the shared interest of this audience. From there, I'll share the Army's efforts with regards to the performance triad, nutrition, activity, and sleep. And then hopefully we'll have some time for an interactive discussion at the end. Overall, my objective is to overview our programs, discuss capabilities, facilitate awareness, as many are not aware that the DoD does research in the areas of the performance triad, and then to have some discussion. So Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine is a subordinate command of the Army's Medical Research and Development Command. The headquarters is in Fort Detrick, Maryland. There are 6 or 7 laboratories across the country and the world. Ours is located in Natick, Massachusetts. The mission of our laboratory is to provide solutions to optimize warfighter health and performance through medical research, with a particular focus on nutrition, austere environments, and physical activity. And of course, like all great government organizations, our vision is to be recognized as the best at what we do. The mission of the Nutrition Division in particular is to conduct research that provides the biomedical science basis, or really the evidence, the physiological evidence for the development of new rations, menus, policies, and programs that enable warfighter health readiness and optimal performance. Our primary transition partner is the Combat Feeding Division, which is also located in Natick, Massachusetts. And this is the group that does the food science or material research that results in the operational ration. So you could think of the Military Nutrition Division and the Combat Feeding Division similar to an academic environment where you've got a Department of Nutrition and a Department of Food Science. I'd also like to remind the group, though, that of the more than 1 million active duty warfighters, very few of them are currently in theater or consuming operational rations. So it's important that we think about what our warfighters are eating at home or in garrison, otherwise known as a cafeteria type environment. Our research thrusts, and this is really how we bring in our funding, are based primarily on performance and recovery nutrition, as we're working in a population that tends to be physically active. We think about healthy eating with regards to overweight, obesity, and warfighter eating behavior. We think about the relative contributions of nutrition and nutritional status to physiological resilience. And we also think about ways that nutrition can be utilized to potentially enhance performance. However, in the end, it's important to remind the group that our primary objective is to define warfighter nutritional requirements, which in many cases are significantly different from those in the civilian environment. The reason for that is the unique challenges that our warfighters face. And Ferris, who gave an excellent presentation, by the way, spoke a bit about energy balance and extreme energy expenditure. To me, this is the #1 physiological enemy of the warfighter. Oftentimes, our warfighters operate in environments, whether that's training or operational, in which negative energy balance is unavoidable. We oftentimes see energy expenditure averaging between 4,000 and 5,000 calories per day, which we simply can't provide. Our warfighters experience chronic sleep deprivation, immune challenges, whether due to operating in some far-off land or residing in close confines. Very different cognitive demands from civilian populations, extremes in temperature, whether it be cold or heat, and then finally the effects of altitude. I like this photo on the right. This comes from Afghanistan, where oftentimes our warfighters face each of those unique challenges all within one day. And so one might imagine the impact of these on warfighter nutritional requirements. And this is something that's not typically studied in academia. And finally, we're very interested in the effects of these challenges on operational performance. So I thought I'd share with you some example projects. One is the use of protein for optimizing lean body mass. I spoke earlier about negative energy balance. And I'd also like to remind the group that we're working in a population that is generally fit. And so when our warfighters experience negative energy balance, oftentimes they're at risk for the loss of lean body mass, which is directly linked to injury and poor performance. And so as it turns out, protein, when provided properly, is one potential method for attenuating such decrements. We think about the effects of inflammation on nutrient absorption, in particular, the effects of unaccustomed activities. We think about iron status with regards to our female warfighters for a couple of reasons. One being that female warfighters tend to have poor iron status as experienced in civilian population. Also, the impact of military training on iron status. We focus on calcium and vitamin D for bone health due to an increased risk for stress fracture in our warfighter population. We think about nutrition and wound healing. I'll share some of our work in the area of the microbiome. We've got those who work in the area of nutrition and cognitive performance. And then finally, some work in dining facility assessment, in that if there are changes in the dining facility, we're very interested in applied outcomes associated with those. Just to highlight a few, this is some of our work in the area of nutritional strategies for muscle recovery and repair following military stress. Really a series of 4 studies led by Dr. Stefan Pasiakos and his team. Within this set of studies, we've been working to understand the optimal protein dose and optimal protein composition for reducing or attenuating the loss of lean body mass during negative energy balance. Thinking about the optimal energy substrate to accompany protein content. Of course, it's not all about protein, right? We need to fuel the body with carbohydrate prior to physical activity. And then finally, testing the field efficacy of applied solutions to determine their applied impact on warfighters. And as a general note, we work with a series of collaborators on all of these projects across academia and internationally, to include the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences and the Norwegian Defense Research Establishment. Another very applied example with our colleagues in Norway was recently conducted along the Russian border. Very few are aware that Norway shares a border with Russia. This provides an opportunity to test a lot of our products and our research hypotheses in an applied way. In this case, looking at a high quality protein rich prototype ration items versus those that are more energy dense in a population that is conducting 7 days of winter military training, which results in the loss of lean body mass. We, like many others, are very interested in the microbiome. It's important to me that our group has moved beyond simply characterizing the microbiome, especially as we know we're not going to resolve the microbiome with our small group of scientists. What we've done is to characterize the impact of the military environment, or the impact of eating operational rations on the microbiome, and then working to develop prototype food products to potentially harness the microbiome to optimize performance or prevent decrements in performance. And this slide depicts a current study at altitude, where we've noted changes in the microbiome that are associated with acute mountain sickness that we're hoping to attenuate through the development of a food product. And then finally, I'm going to move more generally into the performance triad. One effort that the Army has ongoing is titled Holistic Health and Fitness. With regards to this effort, there are embedded health and performance experts to include dietitians, physical therapists, athletic trainers within combat units. And so some of our research is aimed at characterizing objective measures to determine the impact of such specialty providers, dietitians in particular, on military performance. And finally, it is important to note that nutrition science is something that military commanders are not always aware of, and we always need to demonstrate some return on investment. And I just highlight this slide. These are Army soldiers engaged in Special Forces selection. This is a selection course that results in 70% attrition. And as you can see through the odds ratios that I've circled near the middle of the slide, and a higher healthy eating index or improved dietary quality as one enters the Special Forces selection process is predictive of success. What do we do with these data? We form a requirements document. You are all very familiar with the DRIs and the DRI process. The DoD has their own DRIs, military DRIs, although they are very, very much based upon civilian DRIs, and the framework is the dietary guidelines for Americans. There are some adjustments that are the result of our research, oftentimes reflective of increases in energy demand, also differences in electrolyte needs due to heavy physical activity. They appear in these regulations, which then become the basis for operational rations and garrison feeding programs. With the time that I've got remaining, I'd like to focus a bit on the performance triad. This is an Army effort. It began about 10 years ago under the leadership of Lieutenant General Patricia Horoho, who was the Army Surgeon General at the time. Very much a pioneer and very much focused on human performance and human performance optimization. And so the slides I'll present to you are very, very basic, particularly for this audience, in that these are the slides that we share with our warfighters. And I just wanted to provide these to you such that you get some idea of how we share the importance of sleep, activity, and nutrition with warfighters. And so we begin with what we know about most American adults, right? At a very basic level, as Ferris shared with you, sleep very much resets the body. We oftentimes don't get enough. In fact, the majority of the population doesn't get enough. Exercise strengthens the body. Oftentimes we don't do it enough or in the right way. And then finally, food and drink are really the fueling source for the body. And we try to impress upon our warfighters that we're not looking for radical change and that small changes make a big difference. We oftentimes try to share messages from our senior leadership. In this case, this is the Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael Grinston, somebody that we hope our warfighters identify with. And he makes the quote that you need all three, of course, sleep, activity, and nutrition. And so in providing or sharing the goals of the performance triad, we try to set forth some tangible items that we think our population can achieve. With regards to sleep, we're thinking about 7 to 9 hours of sleep per day. With regards to physical activity, we highlight 150 or 75 intense minutes of aerobic activity along with 2 or 3 strength sessions each week, really the combination of aerobic and anaerobic activity. And then finally, with regards to nutrition, we think a lot about servings of fruit and vegetable amongst other items. Why is this important to the Army? And again, we try to bring this back to performance. Chronic sleep deprivation and fatigue are linked to illnesses and injuries. 1 in every 2 or 50% of our soldiers report new injuries every year. Musculoskeletal injuries reduce readiness among soldiers more than any other health condition, and up to 17% of soldiers are classified as obese. I'll focus now a little bit on sleep. Sleep problems impact soldiers. This is very similar to a slide that Ferris showed earlier. In our population, nearly 1/3 of the group get 5 hours of sleep or less per night, which can be linked to clinically significant problems. What are the goals? I mentioned this earlier. Our goal is 7 or more hours of sleep per 24-hour period, as well as short tactical naps when possible. If we do have time at the end, I'd like to come back with Ferris a bit to describe or discuss the potential for sleep banking and the importance of napping when our populations cannot sleep for 7 or more hours consecutively. Sleep in the brain, as Ferris indicated to you, and I'm not going to repeat, sleep as a biological function is crucial to sustain mental operations. In our case, decision making, attention and concentration, reaction time are particularly important, and we try to remind our warfighters of this. As Ferris indicated, the effects of insufficient sleep can lead to weight gain. He shared with you that less than 5 hours of sleep, he shared this in a different way, but may result in greater hunger, less appetite control, and finally cravings for particular items which may be unhealthy. Here are some sleep strategies. As we educate our warfighters, we try to provide strategies for improvement to include aiming for the same bedtime and waking time, although that may not be possible in the military environment sometimes. The idea that we absolutely need to turn off electronics at least 1 hour before bedtime. We need to avoid alcohol near bedtime as well as caffeine, and to consider sleep banking. We do utilize caffeine within the military environment to our advantage, hopefully within limits. And I will remind this group that there is military guidance with regards to limits. Here you see some paradigms that we share with our soldiers for the proper use of caffeine when necessary. Now I'd like to shift briefly to physical activity, another critical component of the performance triad. Here are the goals. I shared some of these with you earlier. Of course, within military populations, we've got unit PT. We're asking that targets supplement the unit PT with exercise for a total of 300 minutes of aerobic activity, along with 3 strength sessions per week. A mix of the types and intensity of exercises, and the importance of including recovery days, particularly after difficult workouts. Some impressions of what it means to be physically fit in the Army. Of course, this is important for us in that we have body weight or body composition standards. Also, we have physical fitness tests, most recently the Army Combat Fitness Test, which moves away from simply sit-ups, push-ups, and a 2-mile run and into tests that are more operationally relevant. Here are some of the measures that our soldiers endure as a part of the Army Combat Fitness Test, to include weight training type exercises or anaerobic exercises such as deadlift, power throw, push-ups, sprint, drag, and carry, a leg tuck, which has been recently replaced with plank, and a 2-mile run. So really a combination of aerobic and anaerobic type activities. Here are some examples for moderate intensity and vigorous intensity type exercise that we recommend for our warfighters. Again, 150 minutes on the moderate side, 75 minutes on the vigorous side. I apologize that I'm going quickly. These are some very basic slides. I just wanted to share them with you in the time that we've got remaining. Some examples of strength training, of course, muscle resistance, use of free weights, bands, or body weights. As I mentioned earlier, we've got the H2F program within the Army, which makes gyms with appropriate equipment available to all war fighters. We try to tie this back to applied outcomes such as injuries. You see that injuries are the #1 reason for soldier medical visits, over 2 million per year, and 60–80% of these are overuse, which could be avoided with appropriate training and recommendations. Here are some of the items that increase risk for injury to warfighter. Warfighters include being both overweight and underweight, poor aerobic fitness as one begins training, inadequate sleep, of course, use of nicotine products, and then our female gender or our female soldiers are at higher risk for injuries, bone injuries in particular, such as stress fracture. This is a slide just linking inadequate sleep to increased injury risk, as you saw earlier from Ferris's presentation. And finally, I'll move quickly through the nutrition component of the performance triad. Here are our goals: at least 8 servings of fruits and vegetables today, hydration, critically important to us, and refueling. Of course, this is all framed by recommendations for meeting the dietary guidelines for Americans. We talk about proactive nutrition, active nutrition, and reactive nutrition, 3 different periods during the day of a soldier, to include active nutrition with regards to event fueling and post-event recovery, focus on sports nutrition, and then proper recovery. We like to remind soldiers that they make 200 decisions about food and beverages each day, and that they should bring some of the knowledge that they gain with regards to this training to those decisions. Here are some recommendations for proactive nutrition, all based upon dietary guidelines for Americans with regards to fruits and vegetables, whole grains, use of dairy, lean protein, seafood. We do think quite a bit about omega-3, and then hydration. Some examples for our soldiers in thinking about proper fueling before exercise. And then finally, the importance of proactive nutrition, how as it links to chronic conditions. Finally, we realize that leaders are critically important with regards to the performance triad. And so we ask our leaders to think about their own habits and remind them that soldiers are watching them. We ask our leaders to talk about it, to talk positively about healthy sleep, activity, and nutrition with those around them, to think about options, to think about the availability of healthy food in garrison in the field, and also to think about how they can impact those options when they make decisions. And then finally, to support local resources, whether it's professionals in uniform or within the medical community. So with that, I think I'll wrap up. You see the link to the website at the bottom of the slide. There are a lot of resources there with regards to the performance triad. Here is my contact information. Please use that to reach out if we run out of time for questions today. Thank you very much.